Ruth, and then Esther is right down the road. Esther's actually right before Job. Sorry about that. I was thinking of Ruth. So after Ezra and Nehemiah comes Esther, and right before Job, Psalms, and Proverbs. Do you ever feel like your life is just ordinary? Do you ever feel that way? Do you ever go to work and think, it's just another day on the job? Do you ever stay at home if you're retired or not working and just feel like, it's the same old day? Does God really have any plans for me? Am I a part of that? Well, we're going to look at a young woman here who very likely felt the same way. Very likely. She was an orphan being raised by an uncle. She probably felt like she didn't have much going on in her life. But we're going to find out something. We're going to read first Esther 4, just verse 13 and 14. Then Mordecai told them to reply to Esther, "Do not think to yourself that in the king's palace you will escape any more than all the other Jews. For if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another place. But you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have not come to the kingdom for such a time as this." Such a time as this. So what in the world is going on here? We've got to do a little history. I'm going to be brief. A little history. Babylon conquered the southern kingdom, Judah. You remember, that was in 586 BC. And they came, Nebuchadnezzar, took away all the Jews, destroyed the temple, destroyed Jerusalem. And all the Jews were taken to Babylon, where they were slaves, for many, many decades. Now, during this time, you'll remember the name of King Cyrus. He's the one that lets some of the Jews go back and helps to build the temple. Well, King Cyrus, that's not King Nebuchadnezzar. How did he get there? King Cyrus was the first in a string of very powerful Persian kings. And he conquered Babylon, killed Nebuchadnezzar, and he's now the king. So Cyrus starts to expand the kingdom, and then his son Darius takes over, and Xerxes is his son, and that's the king in Esther, Xerxes. Ahasuerus is the Hebrew name there, and then Artaxerxes is his son. So these are three of the most powerful rulers on earth, and Xerxes is in the middle. Xerxes is the tall guy, strong, handsome, powerful, ruthless, and jealous. And this is the king that we're going to be reading about. This kingdom in Persia, Susa, that we're going to hear about also, is the big city. And their kingdom extends all the way to India, Pakistan, India, all the way through the Middle East, all the way into Europe and Northern Africa. The center of this Persian kingdom is Susa. This city is in actually Iran now, in the eastern edge of Iran, right near Kuwait and Iraq, right at the very end of the Arab, the sea there, the sea. And there's a couple of rivers and a very fertile valley, and that's where Susa is. At the very end of the Persian Gulf, rivers, lush lands, mountains to the east of them. That's where we are. Now, what is this lady doing here? Xerxes, this powerful king that ruled the entire known world in the Western civilization, just threw out his queen. Just threw her out. Didn't kill her, just threw her out. So he was looking for a replacement. And you could say this is like the ultimate bachelor game, you know? I mean, this guy is the king of the world, tall, handsome, yada, yada. And so his people, his advisors, brought in a dozen or more of the most beautiful virgins in their country. Brought them in. And they were going to be the contestants. One of these contestants is named Esther. And in verse 2:7, the young woman had a beautiful figure and was lovely to look at. And her father and mother died. Mordecai took her as his own daughter. So she was an orphan. Her parents were gone. They may have been killed in the Babylonian conquest. We don't know that. No mom, no dad. Mordecai is her uncle. And he is her advisor. And he said, let's get you into this contest. And so she was in this contest. And lo and behold, I won't go into some of the details. It's morally not a great contest. And Esther had to live apart from the commandments and denied even that she was Jewish. But she played the part, and she got the role. Xerxes chose her as queen of the universe, basically, of the entire kingdom, which was the whole civilized Western world. She was the queen. Now, as with any good Hollywood production, there's got to be some tension, okay? So we got the queen, the king, but we got an evil guy, Haman. Evil. He hated Jews. He hated Mordecai. And he basically bought, for the price of about 700,000 pounds of silver, that's a lot of silver, the right to exterminate the Jews. He hated them. He wanted them all dead. And he wanted to get their plunder because he knew he'd get that money to pay the king to put in his treasury. And so he duped the king into signing orders for this event to exterminate the Jews. And the king, of course, doesn't even know Esther is Jewish. So that's where we are when this conversation picks up that I just read. Queen Esther is in her palace, high and mighty, living the life. Big, strong king that literally rules the world. And now her uncle is saying, you've got to deliver us because we are going to be slaughtered. And Esther is in the middle. Everyone life was on the line, and Esther had to make a decision. For she must choose to deny her culture, to live the lie, stay safe as the queen, or to follow God and beg for mercy and save her culture. What will she do? One of my sons was working in Washington, and he was in a big building in Crystal City, literally right across Interstate 395 from the Pentagon. Literally, bam, bam, right across the street. And he was at work one day up on a higher floor, and he had been in this job. This is regular day's work, boom, boom, boom. And it was a beautiful blue sky, cold, crisp morning in the fall. And the date was September 11th. And mid-morning, all of a sudden, a monstrous boom, an explosion occurred as that plane crashed into the Pentagon, literally right across the interstate. The building was shaking, rocking. No one knew what was happening. Everybody was panicked. What do I do? What do I do? Out the door he went, ushering other people out, heading towards the stairway, saw a group of women, older women, waiting at the elevators, pushing the buttons. And Matthew immediately grabbed him and said, "Don't come, follow me," and pulled them down into that stairwell. They all got out. The building did not collapse, even though it was rocking like it was, and everyone was saved. The question is, was Matt put there, placed there for such a time as this to help a group of women who were totally disoriented, and if that building had come down, would have perished? And the answer, I think, is yes. I think the answer is yes. So often, it is so easy to get rocked into a sleepy attitude at our work, at home, in our neighborhood, around our friends. We do the same things, and that's comfortable. And I enjoy doing the same things. But we get rocked into a sleepy attitude. And then all of a sudden, something rocks our world. It could be a loud explosion. It could be a disaster. It could be a fire. It could be something where you have to take action and help others immediately. Absolutely, it could. But it also could be something more subtle at your workplace. You go into the workroom or at a break, coffee break or lunch break, and there's someone in the corner quietly trying to hide. They're crying. Something has upset them badly. And what do? Do you just have your coffee break, have your lunch, and head on back? Or do you take time and go over there and say, "Sister or brother, can I help you? Can I help you?" Their world is rocking, shaking like that building. Yours isn't. But will you help that person whose world is rocking? Could God have put you in that break room at the very time this man or woman is crying? I don't think that would be an accident. I think God could put you in that place for such a time as this, where you can help someone you know that is hurting. Same way in your family. There may be people in your family that have lost a dear friend, a dear loved one, or people in your family that are lost, that you know are doing things that are wrong. Will you pay attention to your family members and go to them, trust them, show them the way, let them listen to a word from the Lord from you? Will you look at your family member who needs to hear a word from God? These are real questions. And Esther faced this decision right now. So what did she do? What did Esther do? I mean, she's on the fence. She's trying to decide exactly now what she wants to do. Well, let's find out. Let's find out. I'm going to pick up in chapter 4 and verse 16 through 17. Go gather, here's Esther talking, replying to Mordecai. Go gather all the Jews to be found in Susa, the capital city, and hold a fast on my behalf, and do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day, and I and my young women will also fast as you do. Then I will go to the king, though it is against the law, and listen to this, and if I perish, I perish. And then her request to the king. Flip in chapter 7, verses 3 and 4. So she's talking to the king now, King Xerxes. If I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be granted me for my wish, and my people for my request. For we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated. So there she is. There she is. She's jumped off the fence. She's on the fence, can go either way. She's jumped off the fence. And she's jumped off on God's side. And she said, I'm going to go to the king, and if I perish, I perish. I'm going to put my life on the line, Lord. And so there are the words she spoke to this king, and he could have killed her instantly. And she spoke these words. What is your request? He asked her. What is your request? And she said, here it is, my life, that you not kill me or my people, confessing she's a Jew, who have been sold to be annihilated, completely annihilated. She started with prayer and fasting, didn't she? That should tell us something. We as a church, we do this every few months, and we're going to have one I'm working up for our Christmas time, where it'll be outlined. You'll have a 2-hour focused meditation and quiet time, and a 24-hour fast, if you're able. If you medically can't, you maybe cut back your food a little bit. But we do this, and we're going to be doing this as a church in the next 3 weeks, okay? And right at the very beginning of December, as we get into our Christmas season, we're going to fast and pray as a church. That's what Esther started with. And then through that, she got the strength from God to say the words, if I perish, I perish. And she went before the king. Now, the quick answer to the story, the king, that's the first time he'd heard of what was going on to the Jews. He had signed something that Haman had put under him and probably didn't even know what he signed. He found out about this, and long story short, the big gallows he was going to hang Mordecai on, they hung Haman on. And all the people that were going to kill the Jews, they told the Jews, well, you can go to battle with them and you can kill them. And so all the people that were going to kill the Jews, they got killed. Okay? And Israel was saved. The interesting thing, as I close with my last example, is that there was another Jewish young man that was almost the same age as Esther. Esther was probably late teens, early 20s. This young man was like 17 or 18. And he lived in a time when someone else wanted to annihilate all the Jews. That someone else was Hitler and Nazi Germany. And his name was Tibor Rubin. He was a young Jewish boy. And we're going to show a picture of him here, I think. Okay. Maybe not. But at any rate, he was a young Jewish boy trying to get out of Hungary. Nazi army was coming. They were at the border with Switzerland, and they got caught, he and his brother. So they were put into a prison camp, Mauthausen, basically a slave camp. His parents and his sister, unfortunately, went to Auschwitz. And every one of them were killed, gassed. But he worked in this slave camp and was strong enough to keep working. There he is. And he survived, and in 1945, the army freed him. He survived that Nazi concentration camp. He immigrated to the U.S., and what did he want to do? First thing he wanted to do is give back. He wanted to join the army and give back to the country that saved him. So with some help of his buddies taking the army exam, who probably cheated and helped him with the English part of that exam, he got through and he got into the army. He was sent immediately to the Korean War, which had just broken out. And at that time, his sergeant was another anti-Semite. His sergeant hated Jews. And he put Tibor up on a hill and said, Tibor, you go up there and you hold that hill against the enemy by yourself. And he did. With his rifle, he held off numbers and numbers of the North Korean army. He was wounded, but he still made it. Their company was eventually captured, and he was put again in a prison camp. But Tibor, because he had been years in a Nazi prison camp, this was probably not near as bad. He knew what to do. And so Tibor was looking after all of his men, the 40 men that were in his group. He knew how to steal. He would at night creep in and steal supplies from the Korean army, the storage building. He made a way to go in, and he'd bring food and secretly give it to his men. Whatever they needed, he would try to get. And he even saved one guy who wanted to give up. And Tibor said, look, I've got some medicine here that's going to make you feel better. This guy was depressed. And he took this fake medicine, placebo we call it, and the guy felt better. Saved his life because he faked him out and gave him what he needed to keep him going. Because he knew in prison camp, if you don't have a good attitude and focus each day to live, you're going to be killed. He could have been shot instantly if he was caught stealing that food. As the Lord would have it, the army came and rescued again. And that prison camp was saved, and Tibor was saved. He was 24 then, and for 4 years of his life, he had been in either a Nazi concentration camp or a Chinese and Korean prison camp. But he went back to America and lived a wonderful life, but yet still faced prejudice. He was nominated for the Medal of Honor. His sergeant that hated him wouldn't sign off. Years and years went by, but finally, we have another slide of what happened. And you'll be able to see with that second slide what I was going to tell you. Well, you'll see it maybe. At any rate, he was denied the Medal of Honor for many, many years. But in 2005, George W. Bush awarded Tibor Rubin the Medal of Honor. There he is. He lived to be 86, dying in 2015. The only Holocaust survivor to receive the Medal of Honor in the history of our country. A Holocaust survivor, a Jew who was hated, whose all of his Jewish heritage was trying to be wiped out by Hitler. God used him to save 40 prisoners of war. Just like God used a Jewish woman, same age, 2,500 years, 600 years ago. He used the same thing, did the same thing to another evil man who wanted to exterminate them. Esther stood tall in this time of need. So Esther followed God and placed him first in her lives. And for such a time as this, she saved the Jewish people. So Esther, as well as Tibor, had put their life on the line for others. And when something rocked Esther's world, she chose to follow God for such a time as this. So I ask you, we're likely not going to have these kind of events in our lives, are we? We're not going to ever be in a Nazi German prison camp. That's not going to happen. They don't exist anymore, except in small cults in different places. Prayerfully, we're not going to have another 9/11 with things rocking buildings. But things will happen in our lives and in the lives of people around us that will rock just as much. And God has put you there. And that's why I pray that each of us will stand up for Jesus when things are rocking either our world or other worlds around us, and people that have lost loved ones, are hurting, lost a job. We will be there for such a time as this. We will not run from that. On that fence, we will not jump off on our safe side. We'll jump off on the side of God, where we will step up and help that person in need, because we are here for a purpose every day of our life. And when God puts people in our lives, that is for a purpose. And may we truly be prepared and looking with the eyes of the Lord to be that person at such a time as this. Pray with me.